Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is April, and if you don't notice, I have a different background. I'm in the middle of moving, so yeah, there's nothing really on my walls yet. I'm trying to figure all that out. This is my telescope right next to me, by the way, if you're wondering what that huge white thing is. But yeah, so for today's video, before we hop into what I'm going to talk about, I just want to share with you guys the tea that I'm drinking. I'm having Yogi's Kava tea. This is a really good tea for anxiety. It's especially good also at night if you're trying to fall asleep and you need just that little extra boost to help you fall asleep and stay asleep. This is something that I highly recommend. You can possibly take too much kava, and if you have issues with your kidneys or your liver, it's a little bit more of a pass, I would say, because it can damage it slightly, especially if you have too much. Usually a small amount isn't going to do anything, but a little bit more of a larger amount can cause some damage. So for today's video, I really wanted to talk about anxiety. I know that it is Mental Health Week, and I think one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys wasn't like tips on how to get past like a panic attack or anything like that, although I could do an entire separate video on that. I wanted to share just kind of a different perspective on anxiety. That way it changes your relationship with anxiety, and I think that sometimes when you change your perspective of something, that's the first step to change. And when you change your relationship with anxiety, kind of your whole life begins to unravel differently. Just for a disclaimer, you don't have to listen to everything that I'm saying, or anything that I'm saying for that matter. You could just kind of take what I'm saying lightly and maybe see if something might, sit with you well. Also, please don't take this video the wrong way. I know that anxiety is extremely hard to cope with in your day-to-day life, and I just totally understand that all of this is much easier said than done, so I don't want you to think that I am trying to express that this is just as simple as I'm making it sound. But basically, my point to this video is that in general, we allow anxiety to govern our lives. We hate it, but we use it as a crutch for almost everything, if not everything. I know when it comes to things like showing up at work or doing your best at a job, putting your best foot forward in relationships or in social situations, just giving your absolute best with everything, even if that means exercising or eating right, it's very, very easy and understandably very easy to use anxiety as a crutch and say, well, I can't because I'm anxious. And in a sense, it's true. You feel like you're crippled, so you feel like you're unable to do these things. But that's when you need to become your own parent and demand a lot more from yourself. I was sitting in the car on the way home the other day, and I was just like thinking, and I'm like, thinking about anxiety and just my life, and I'm like, I'm going on about 11 years with anxiety. My anxiety started around the age of 14 years old. So say I get like super lucky and I get to live to 100 years old, and the odds of that are somewhat slim. That means that already 11% of my life has been devoted and governed by anxiety and depression, etc. It's been my entire identity for 11 years. I don't want that to be my reason for all of my shortcomings, or what I refer to as my shortcomings, for the next 11 years. That's definitely not my ideal life. So I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, this is just kind of crazy that this is what has happened. And I'm realizing that, despite the fact that I am anxious, despite my depression, despite my situation, and although we all have a right to feel how we feel and to maneuver our way through our issues as we choose, the world is still going to continue to revolve in the same exact way, whether or not I have anxiety and whether or not I decide to use anxiety or depression as my crutch. So, I was sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, that's sucky. Like, I almost want to be able to use it as a crutch. I want to say I can't do this because I'm anxious, and the world has been a little bit more accepting of it lately. I think the whole breaking the stigma idea has truly worked in a big sense. So I think we are able to use it as a crutch more frequently than we've been able to in the past. But now I realize that what I'm doing is actually lowering my standards for my own life, because I'm like, all right, if I continue to use this as a crutch for the next 11 years, I'm not going to pursue my dreams. I'm not going to live to my fullest potential or be who I wanted to be my whole life, because I'm going to use my anxiety and my depression as my excuse for not being my absolute best. So I figure that the best way that I can move forward with this and decide how I'm going to live as April and not live as April with anxiety and April with depression and April with my whole other boatload of issues, is to know and understand my triggers and the sensations that I feel, and understand what they are. That way I can define that and put that in its box when it happens versus that putting me in a box when it happens. So I can say, all right, I know this feeling, I'm getting anxious, I'm about to have a panic attack, or I know that I don't like this, I know what it does to my head, and I know the kind of thoughts that it gives me, but I'm not going to believe my thoughts because I know that they're going to pass anyway. It's about putting each thing in its own box and compartmentalizing each of our thoughts and our triggers and our sensations. That way it doesn't govern us anymore. Because ultimately what I've began to understand, and maybe this is obvious to some people and still impossible to surpass, although it's not impossible to surpass, but we feel it is that at the end of the day, we are free to make our choices in how we're going to handle this, or how we're going to handle anything in our lives, but we're not free to escape the outcome of it. I don't want to use my anxiety and depression as an excuse to make my dreams smaller. I want to approach my life the way that my 5-year-old self would have approached my life. Before I had ever experienced anxiety and depression, I want my life to be what I had thought it was going to be at that point. And that's being super successful, super happy, super outgoing. Maybe my interests have changed as I've gotten older, but I don't think my dreams should shrink just because I now have a reason of why they shrunk. I don't want to ramble too much, but I hope that you guys understand what I'm saying, and I hope you don't think that I'm being too harsh. Like I said, I know that this is a lot easier said than done, but when you change the way that you form your relationship with anxiety and you start to govern it as much as possible, even by taking like the absolute smallest steps and just saying, you know what, I know I'm going to be anxious today in the morning, but despite that, I'm getting up and I'm going to school, or I'm getting up and I'm going to work. My anxiety's not going to let me not do my hair and makeup today and not get ready for my day and not go out tonight. It's just not. And eventually, once you make that first initial step and you say that it's not going to govern you, and you should do it with something small that just seems like really easy, that way you take it one step at a time rather than jumping to something big right off the bat and getting overwhelmed and seeing it as impossible. That's when you'll be able to create that habit and really begin to believe that this doesn't need to control you as much as it has. And then eventually the feelings start to dissipate just a little bit more and a little bit more. So I don't even know if I made any sense when I was talking. I'm trying to get my point across as clearly as possible, but that is just my view on the way that I'm approaching my mental state at this point, and I felt like it was really appropriate to make this video as I was thinking about it this week in the car, since it is Mental Health Awareness Week, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So if you guys have any other tips on how you can change your relationship with your mental health, just leave it in a comment below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications so you get notifications whenever I come out with a new video, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!